Hello, Get Better Faster Nation. I am Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co host, the one and the only James Chester, and our incredible executive producer, Rachel Bradley, we want to welcome you back to another exciting episode of the Get Better Faster podcast. And I've got to tell you, after our last conversation with today's guest, GBF went wild. The response was overwhelming. You had questions, you demanded more, and frankly, we had only scratched the surface of what she knows. So we're bringing her back with a mission to expose the biggest health crisis destroying high performers right now. We're thrilled to welcome back the health queen herself, Sam Beau Patrick. With 38 years of experience and now 10 published books under her belt, including 2 bestsellers, Sam has just released what might be her most important work yet, Corporate Burnout. In this book, she's exposing why burnout has become the endemic corporate disease, destroying careers, relationships, and health at an alarming rate. She's not talking about needing a vacation or practicing self-care. She's talking about the hormonal destruction happening inside high-performing professionals that conventional medicine completely ignores. Today, we're diving deep into why the corporate world is literally making people sick, how hormones are the missing link nobody's talking about, and what you can do right now to prevent becoming another burnout statistic. Pay attention because we're about to expose some uncomfortable truths about the corporate health crisis. Sam, my very good friend, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. Great to be back on, Dr. Jason, also James. So wonderful to have you allowing this opportunity for people to learn. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I have a lot of newfound interest in some of the topics we talked about last time. As Jason was mentioning off in the green room, there's a lot of topics to be discussed when it comes to men's health, women's health, and now we're talking more about the corporate world and how these I guess all intersect. But as Jason said in your introduction, you've done 10 books, which I think you've actually done 11. And I know Dr. Jason's excited to talk to you about the 11th. It's like the 13th floor in the elevator. They don't exist, right?
That's it.
and 2 of your books became bestsellers, but you felt compelled to write this Corporate Burnout. And right now, what made you sit down and say the world needs this book right at this moment? And what's the crisis you're seeing that demanded you to speak up?
Yeah, great question. That's the book. It originally, I started calling it, and I started writing it 3 years ago. And from a hormone perspective, I was seeing things that weren't being touched or picked up upon by other professionals. And that's because psychologists who are picking up workplace issues, they're not just about the shoulders up. I get that, but they're certainly not hormone experts, and they're certainly not doing lab tests and putting links together. They're listening to people, and they're going back into childhood or to, what are they doing to manage their time better. But the hormone literacy really wasn't there. And this book started off 3 years ago. It turned into War and Peace. I called it Power Shift, the dynamic role of hormones in the workplace. And the driving force for starting it was, how does a 60-year-old male who's had his shop for, 40 years, now when I started writing in 2024, 2025, adapt it to the 22-year-old girl who might be going through heavy periods? How does he understand that? And how does he accommodate the workplace to be safe for her, or accommodating and welcoming, and also still getting productivity out of her? And what unfolded was the fact that the menopause cohort in the workforce now is larger than it's ever been before. Symptoms are greater than they've ever been before. And workplaces, by design, on the whole, are very masculine in trying to get people to perform. So there was that, and I went, wow, that is worthy of a book on its own. Then I went, wow, the girls that have polycystic ovary syndrome and the boss babes, and they're pushing themselves and driving themselves, all these, they're not necessarily alpha females, but they're high drivers, and all the hormone and infertility issues that come from that hormone state, largely driven by, mindset, but how they spend majority of their time, which is at work, to the 50-plus-year-old male who has low testosterone, who is leading a lot of these companies, and what's going on in his mind and motivation, and how's he handling it. So it started off being Power Shift, the dynamic role of hormones in the workplace, because I could see that these discussions weren't being had, to wrapping it back up into an easier topic called Corporate Burnout, because I feel like that name is more relatable, and it actually forced me to reduce a book that was massive to something that people can pick up and take away on a weekend and read and learn, which is all my books are about, just breaking it down, making it relatable so they can implement things that make a difference.
Well, I think it's a very timely piece, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of people out there that there's a lot of talk in the world, right? Testosterone, premenopause, postmenopause, menopause, all these things. And it's a very time consuming thing to start understanding it. And we used to always just say, get in control of your emotions, will you? And, and try to get people back to like, understand like the world needs to go on. You matter, but not as much as the world going on. And now we're saying you matter, but the world going on doesn't matter as much as us getting you right before we move on. So my big question after you shared that with me and the process that you followed from the demographic of a 40-year business owner to a 22-year-old worker bee is, why are we trading our health for money or for a career when I don't know if there's a simple answer or a simple solution for that, but people are actually taking the resources that they make with their status and the money that they make, and they trade their health away for it. Why have we made that so common for people to do that?
Well, I'm sure you have. Yeah, Jason, you answer this one, and I can add.
Oh my gosh, thanks for the softball pitch there. No, I mean, I think it's here. I'll say this. It's multifactorial, right? So I mean, there's a lot of things going on with that. I think that, boy, I mean, this is my opinion. I'm not an expert in this by any means, but Rachel and I talk all the time that this isn't like, oh my God, this is like brand new material. I think we've probably all witnessed this or experienced this or participated in, and I know I'm all three of those, but we become a very materialistic driven world, right? I was just at a Bible study on Sunday evening, some great friends of ours, and we were talking about, we were just finishing Philippians and talking about Paul, and he's writing the letter to Philippians, and basically, I'm in jail and I'm probably going to die, but things can keep going on, right? And by the way, here's how we give back. And we started talking about what that means to be a cheerful giver, and what that means. And I don't know, somehow it got brought up in our discussion about being afraid of poverty. And I had shared this idea that I've been poor in my life. I came from an upper middle class Midwestern family. And it should have been pretty easy, but I had no financial support, no emotional support. My family dynamics were just atrocious. We can have a whole counseling session on this sometimes. But I ended up at some point, I went to college. I was self-funded. I was working 3, 4, or 5 jobs at a time, like legitimately. And I always had at least 3 jobs. And there was a point one summer where I found myself living out of the back of my brother-in-law's old pickup that I was driving. I didn't have an actual home. I had a roll-up mattress. I would wake up in the mornings. I would go, the place that I was working, I was a morning supervisor at a daycare. And they had a shower. It was like an old home that had been converted into a daycare, but it was like a Montessori style. It was pretty cool. And I would go in there and take a shower in the morning and make breakfast for the kids, but that's what I was eating. And then I couch surf for a few months, and this went on for a while. And I have a real fear of poverty. And I was saying that when I drive home or drive where we live, I always drive past. This is not a judgment. This is just an observation. We drive past this trailer park, and I don't know if they have these in Australia, but we have these mobile home parks, and typically it's people on the lower end of financial stability, really struggling. There's a lot of issues in these parks. I mean, it's not a judgment of the people that are there. It's just the environment. With poverty comes crime, comes drugs, comes prostitution. And I mean, there's a lot that happens in these parks. And I'm from a family, like I said, 4 of us, 4 siblings total, half of us, I mean, I mentioned I was homeless and couch surfed for half a year before landing on my feet, even though I was working 3-4 jobs trying to get myself through college. 2 of my siblings lived in mobile trailer parks. And it hits home every time I'm driving by and I say out loud to Rachel, oh my gosh, we got to promise like we're never going to go there. And I mean, there's something would have to catastrophically happen. I mean, and it could, I mean, with the will of God and who knows how the world works, but I could wind up there again, or I could wind up there. I doubt it, but it's still a fear of mine. I have this knee-jerk reaction. So one of the members of this Bible study is a pastor. Actually, it's interesting. Everyone in this Bible study has been through seminary except for Rachel and I, and we're just novices. We don't know anything about anything. So we're just sponging. But one of the pastors that was there, Tony, he's like, basically, let me one up you on poverty. I grew up in South Side of Chicago. And I mean, it's a violent, destructive poverty. Like it's a violent, destructive poverty. And then he told the stories of, gangs and graffiti and like danger and all of that. And then he had gone to Manila on some mission work and experienced, he said, a level of poverty that he didn't even know existed. Like, he's like, it'd make the South Side of Chicago look, and he's like, so your mobile homes that you're scared of are like luxury items to South Side Chicagoans. And when I went to Manila in that poverty, it was like a luxury, like South Side of Chicago would have been a luxury. And then, not to be one-upped, and it's not a one-up game, but it was just an interesting conversation. Our good friend, Renata, she's from Brazil. And she's like, well, let me tell you what I grew up in. I grew up in Rio. And when you were traveling from, we were fortunate to have a home that we could call home, but traveling from home to school or to work, she's like, you just tried not to get shot because, I mean, people just randomly shoot into the air or shoot people for no reason because that's what it's like in Rio. And she's like, and I was like, and so we were all like, oh my God. And it's just like layer after layer. But then Renata nailed it. She said, when I came to America, I had a little culture shock, but I assimilated very quickly into having all the luxuries that we're all used to, even if it was just a stable roof and stable food and a car that works and, not getting shot at, in her case. And I feel like to answer this question of like, why do we trade, to bring it back home? Why do we trade our time, our energy, our health for the money, right? For money. I think that we're inundated. So amongst all that, we're inundated with, you can't be poor, especially in a westernized world. You can't be poor and have an enjoyable life. You can't be poor and provide for your family well, or eat, like there's all these things that come with it. And there's this, and so we're sold, if you will, with commercials, with advertisements, with, endorsements, with, I mean, all of it, we're sold like these things that we need. And we can't have a happy life without those things. What's interesting to kind of bring it home. So again, I think that we're sold an idea of materialism. So we have to, you have to work hard. And here in America, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but I think it's similar. If you're not willing to put in 120-hour work weeks for some, shitty paycheck, someone else will. So if you won't do it, someone else will do it. So you just keep working and working and working and working. And so there's that. But finally, what I'll say is talking about, Manila, talking about Brazil, Rio, talking about when Rachel and I went to Fiji and experienced poverty like that. It's interesting because when you get into those very, very poor communities that, again, I think in the Western world, we don't really see a whole lot of, even though we might fantasize that we do. It's just different. It's a different level of poverty. The people seem really happy. And when I was chatting with, when Rachel and I were at the World Changers event in September, where I previewed my TEDx talk for this year, the N of one, get ready, everybody. It's going to be great. But when we talked to those people, I was chatting with someone and he said, in Fiji, we don't have anything, but we're very happy. And it seems like in America, you have everything and you're very unhappy. And James, I think that you hit it. It's because of this whole thing. We're trading our health for materialism. It's not just a paycheck, it's materialism. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. I don't want to cut you off, James, but yeah, let's hear what you say. But then I want to hear what Sam has to say.
Well, I want to pass it back to Sam, but I want to say a poignant statement that I've heard time and time again. We can go man and woman with this one. If a man or woman has their health, they have a million dreams. If they don't, they have one. So no matter the prosperity, in the career, all roads lead back to the thing that you traded out, your health. And I think that that's the crux of today's conversation is corporate burnout. Is we're trading for dollars and cents for the one thing that if you don't have it, you'll do anything to get it back. And that's abandoning career. That's abandoning prestige. That's abandoning all of the things that anything you bought or earned, the home. You know, we both come from Iowa, Jason. I'd always tell people if one of our loved ones got sick, we'd sell the farm for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And nothing matters except for that person coming back online and being better and healthy again, get better faster. It's the reason we do the show. But it seems like it's this eternal trap that you have to go to the status to lose it all in order to realize what you actually have is yourself. And I know Sam's probably thinking a lot on what you said and the things I just brought up, but Sam, I want to pass it back to you and get your input on the topics.
Yeah, I think Jason said, we've been sold materialism as status. And, we're only a generation away from, the late 60s. Well, that's when I was born, when it was a privilege to go to university, and it was seen as a privilege to have education. It was seen as a privilege to have shoes and
Amen.
all these things. Our parents kind of unconsciously installed that, I'm doing this for you so you can have a better shot at life. And so there's a lot of pressure unconsciously that people, I believe, feel they've got to have that materialism chase, because that's the sale, or what was sold, is that money equals status, money equals more friends, money equals one thing money does offer is more choice. And that's potentially the only real difference between someone having a lot of money and someone not having much money, is it offers you choice. Obviously choice in food, accommodation, travel, that sort of stuff. But it's other than that, there's so many faux pas with it. And I was thinking while you were chatting, Jason, about the Dan Buettner with the blue zones. So he traveled around the world checking out communities where health was superior to anywhere else in the world, and of his identifiable things that people were doing consistently across these communities, making money wasn't one of them. Having a purpose was. And waking up, and I think he said to the fishermen in Japan, what are you doing, old man? You're in your 80s and you're dragging that fishing net out. And the old man was like, well, if I don't catch the fish for the village, who is going to? So it wasn't about how much status or wealth they had. It was the fact they knew they had a purpose.
Purpose.
Yeah, and I think we've traded a lot of these really critical human needs and translated them into, money actually represents my purpose. Money represents my health. Money represents my community. And that's not the case, but that's the sale that we're living under.
Well, I think I think you're totally right, and all three of us come from this entrepreneurial world where we know people, most of us in this world have not taken conventional jobs, or at least don't have them right now. We're trying to carve out a space, hopefully with purpose, to help make the world a happier, earthier, better place in all of our actions and interactions, or something like that. That's my purpose statement. But I think that you're completely correct, and James, you're correct in that we've traded our health in a lot of ways for whatever this thing. I call it materialism, consumerism, consumption. Conspicuous consumption, in fact, that, we need more and more and more. I had a coach one time, Matt Lohman, who, had done very well financially and also was very much at peace and helping other people be at peace. And he said, don't chase numbers, because no matter how much you have in the bank, there's always going to be another zero that you want, if that's what you're looking at, meaning you're always going to want to 10x or keep growing that bank account. And I think it's an easy trap to fall into. And I think that, for me, I remember, I won't name these folks, but some other folks that were from our mutual friend, Alex Sharfin, when Sam and I met through a mutual friend of ours, Alex Sharfin, and they were fascinated. They were other functional medicine doctors, doing what I was doing. And so much so that they were like, man, you've got systems down. And I will say Rachel is brilliant at systems and operations and all of that stuff. And they flew, here to Iowa to stay with us for, a week or so and just kind of observe, what are you doing? How can we implement, what you're doing into their practice? And what's interesting is about midway through the week, both of them independently came to the same conclusion that whatever I was doing and whatever Rachel and I were doing was not worth it. It wasn't worth it as far as finances go. That we were, spinning wheels. We were burning the candle at both ends. We weren't sleeping. There was no time to take care of ourselves. There was no prioritization of, I don't know, whatever this is, self-health, or prioritization of the self, of the preservation of health in body, mind, and spirit. And the end part of that was one of those doctors actually dropped out of completely seeing patients, and rebranded, wrote a couple of books, and now takes people on retreats to help with their relationships, which I think is interesting. The other doctor also completely dropped out of practice, and went into consulting with other doctors to help them not have some type of burnout in their practice. And so my take home after that weekend or that week was that whatever I'm doing is not sustainable. And sure enough, it came crashing down really, really hard. So this topic hits home for me really hard with Rachel and I, around 2023. We were burning out. We had just done a build out in a brand new building, for our brick and mortar functional medicine clinic. We had assembled a team together. It was robust. We were doing very, very well for not just the Midwest, but for anywhere in the world. Our business was doing very, very well. We were helping lots and lots of people. And about midway through 2023, Rach and I had, I don't know what happened. We just had a heart-to-heart conversation where we looked at each other and we're like, shit's got to change and we decided by Thanksgiving Day. So into November. Shit's got to change. We've got to not be on this insane hamster wheel, treadmill, whatever it is, whatever we're doing, or we have to bail on this because we're going to die. We're going to help, all these people, but we're going to die. We are not being exemplars of what we're teaching. And so, that only, made us burn the candles, in both ends and in the middle and, other places too. And we got to Thanksgiving and it was horrible. We were miserable. We were unhappy. We were unhealthy. We were so stressed. We weren't sleeping. I mean, my blood pressure and my heart rate was through the roof. Migraines. I mean, I saw Rachel. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about her health, but I mean, she got down to, I don't know, something like 115 pounds or 110 pounds. And she's 5'10". I mean, so she's not a small person. I mean, she's a small frame person anyway, but I mean, her health was in the toilet. We were both neurotic messes. And we walked away from it. We walked away from this robust, 7+ figure business that could have afforded us any lifestyle anywhere that we wanted, anywhere in the world. And we shut the whole project down. We walked away from our build out. We regrouped. We went virtual just pre-pandemic, end of 2019, and figured out the whole virtual space. And then, COVID hit, and that was a game changer, I think, for everybody. But we burned out. I mean, and it affected, I want to get into the details of this, but I mean, our hormones were crap. I mean, I'll get into more details if it comes up, but I mean, it was serious. And it was honestly, I don't know.
Talking to you, I was in Rome and I remember we were having a chat on Messenger and I'm like, dude, you're burnt out. Yeah. And I think, and if I could say, I think there's a degree of not denial, but actual not recognizing it when you're in the midst of it. So people from the outside see it. I could see it. And those of us, you can see people as well that you work with or you love. You can just see their joys going, their sparks going. They're becoming not even robotic and functional. They're becoming quite dysfunctional. But people themselves, when you ask them, they're, no, I'm fine, or yeah, I'm tired. But they don't actually realize how bad or severe their burnout is. And it's sometimes like watching someone drown, it's like, I want to help you, but you're not putting your hand up yet. So please put your hand up. So I'll just grab it, and rip them out of the situation.
I remember that, I remember that. Thank you for, trying to get my hand up at the time. And it's interesting because honestly, and I mean this with transparency, sitting here, I don't know, you never know how life could be in all the parallel universes and all the choices that we could make, right? But Rachel was my mirror. And when I saw the love of my life, like perishing, I mean, that's what was happening with her. She was perishing. She wasn't, not thriving, but not even surviving. Like she was on a downhill trend. And I would do anything for this woman. I mean, you guys know that.
Sell the farm.
Anybody that follows me for a half minute knows that I would do anything for this woman. She loved my life. She's everything to me. And when I saw her demise, like, I think the reason that we shifted gears, it wasn't, I want to pretend like, and then I wised up and I figured it out. No, it was because I wanted to save my wife. And if she wouldn't have been around, I'd probably, who knows what, I don't know. I don't know that I would have stepped out like I did. James, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's back to that saying that I said, we both come from Iowa. And if there's a loved one that was sick, we'd sell the farm for him.
Yeah.
You just abandoned the project, and it's not much different. And, sometimes people question me, Sambo, like they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'm a professional podcaster. And some people claim that I have this like hobby job, but it affords me an amazing life. One of my mentors once told me that you get to do what you want, when you want, with who you want. And that's the pinnacle of achievement in his eye for me. And I go, yeah. And some people think that I have a hobby job, but I'm impacting the hearts and souls of millions of people by having a skill set that most people want to just get into because they want clients. I go, I do this because I see a legacy in the projects that I create and the work that I do, and it affords me the ability to do the life that I choose. So could I go out and sell any bauble and trinket for any cause? Heck yeah. Like if you want me to go sell cars, I'd probably become the number one car dealer sales guy at any dealership. If you wanted me to go sell timeshares, I'd probably have the most timeshare signups out of anybody that ever worked in timeshares. But I don't want that. All I want to do is do what I do. So that gets me to a question that I know that you've had experience with, and that you're like, you help people with, is business travel disaster, and how we can, how business and travel impact our health. Because I said I can go where I want, when I want, with who I want. But for people who are road warriors like myself, constantly flying, eating hotel food, sleeping in different time zones, how is it specifically accelerating their home decline? Like Jason's talking about this lifestyle that he built with Rachel that was unsustainable. How is that travel lifestyle like ruining people's testosterone or their estrogen? Like, how do you correct that?
Okay, so just to pick up something you said, by the way, I wrote a blog on my LinkedIn about this, or my newsletter, about redefining success, because I think individual success and what that feels like or looks like to someone is radically different to what we're being sold. Money in the bank, I believe we all need a certain degree of certainty, but I don't know that I mean, I love money. It gives me a lot of choice. I don't know that having 100 million, though, is going to be radically different to me having 10 million. So at what point do, we pick our level where we've got, I can drink nice wine if I like, I eat incredible food, and I do have freedoms without having to work 100 hours. And I've just re-entered yesterday a corporate group, and I know there's this energy and there's like, right, we've got to do this faster, quicker. And I'm a little bit meh. I might seem a bit reticent because I have been burned out a couple of times, and the lessons sit on your shoulders. So if you go down that trajectory again, it rears its head. You start gaining weight, you start losing joy, you start waking up at 3 a.m., not pondering, but actually ruminating on ideas. So I don't want to go back there. So I'm very protective, like you, James, of, no, this is success for me. And my values are aligned when I'm in this place. And I know that greatness is coming from me being the most powerful and happiest in this container I'm putting myself in of purpose. Back to the travel disaster and business. Actually, there was another book that I've written, Jason, and it was called Hot Tips for the Business Traveler. And It was
Great.
my
Yeah.
first.
I want to read that
Yeah,
book now.
it's my first book.
It's
And
probably
I
written
wrote,
about me.
yeah, I wrote it in 2009, and I was so green-eyed, or just so green. I thought, oh, this book it'll. So this is the story behind this book. So at the time, I'd had 9 years in corporate, 2 weeks on the road, 2 weeks at home, living out of a suitcase, buffets. These are in my
It
pharmaceutical
is about
days.
James.
Yeah, I was traveling, to the States, to Europe, all around the country, going to conferences and wining and dining from 6 a.m. through to midnight and doing deals. And for me, the book was written about how I found health within all that and how I could be true to health, because health has always been, health is my wealth, 100%. So, the little things like power napping, exercise is just, there'll be a 1 hour lunch break, and sure, you're meant to network, but I would go, right, that 1 hour is my time. I'm going to exercise. Clocking off, not drinking after a certain point at night was, there's no point going to bed drunk, particularly at work functions, unless it's a celebratory event and you're letting the throttle off for a little bit, sure. But if it's on an ongoing basis, it doesn't serve any great benefit. So I'd stop, I'd have drinks for dinner, be very mindful of it, and then have a cutoff date time. Just go, look, I don't need any more alcohol after this point. I'm happy, I'm bubbly. I did do a lot of business at the bar, as we say in Australia. So a lot of my networking or doctors learning to trust me or conversations with pharmacists, a lot of it was at the bar, because that's when the guards are down and the friendships and the genuine questions were coming out. But also, I guess I offset that with, the buffet. I wouldn't eat all the bread stuff, and I wouldn't eat I just didn't have dessert. I had a caveat, I wouldn't have dessert. So I had salads and protein, and I'd fill up a breakfast on protein and veggies. So that's how I managed the eating side of it. That's how I managed the alcohol side of it. And you've just got to have a moral compass on the other stuff that can lead to disasters. Like, if you're with a partner and monogamy is an agreement between the two of you, you never breach it. As soon, because there's opportunity when you're a business traveler to do all that stuff. And I remember the first time I started in corporate, I went with one of the older reps, and we went out, 7-hour drive to this location. And he said, Sammy, what happens on this side of the mountain stays on this side of the mountain. And I was like, oh my God, what does that mean? Because I had no idea of this whole industry. And what was the other thing he said? He said, oh, you don't want to work too hard because you're going to show the rest of us up. There were all these kind of rules as a rookie into this environment. But I wrote the book to share with others what I'd learned over the 9 years, how to stay healthy, how not to gain weight. I mean, corporate weight, it goes around your belly. I call it worry weight, but it's corporate weight as well. People get that rotund, apple-shaped figure, which is the worst weight distribution for heart disease, diabetes, stroke, hypertension. It's from cortisol, majority of it, and inactivity, and having a glass too many at nighttime or a scotch with Coca-Cola and things like that. So it's not hard to manage it. People just need to know be a bit more conscious in their decisions when they're being a business traveler. But just to finish up on why I wrote the book. So I wanted to write a book. It was a topic I was very passionate about. And I wrote the book with Richard Branson in mind. And I had 3 children, and I was a single mum for about 17 years. But I actually got an extra mortgage on my house. I believe so much in this book, and I wanted Branson to endorse it and have it in the planes and also in his hotels. So I took an extra mortgage out of my home. This is must have been 2010, and went to the UK, and I got as far as his PA. So I just believed I was going to meet Richard. I was just so naive. Got into London, and he has his building was at Kensington, old playground sort of thing. And I went there, and someone opened the door and said, oh, you must work here. Everyone had lanyards, but I just followed them in and found my way to Richard's PA and said, I had this balloon, and hot air balloon. I had my book poised in it. And I said, I want to meet Richard because I believe if he endorses this, we can help orphans around the world. And that was my whole driving thing. I was prepared to mortgage my home, and I think my mortgage is still exactly the same, 15 years on, I've never paid it down. I've tried, but it's still that same. And I didn't get to meet Branson. The board said, no, we're not going to run with that idea. But anyway, that was what I was prepared to do to get that book out there. So that's it's got a lot of fond memories, that book, and that's all about the corporate traveller, business traveller.
That's
interesting.
I love that story. I wish that you would have had a chance to meet him, because, then I would vicariously, know him through you. And it's interesting, as we started traveling with James, Rachel and I, and going to, various conventions and seminars and talks and all that kind of stuff. What's really cool about James, that probably not a lot of people know, I hope it's okay for me to share this. I think you know what I'm going to share. He travels with a whole kit, like his health kit. And what I mean by that is it's a whole suitcase full of really cool stuff that just helps him like stay healthy. And he's like, no matter what's going on, like 5 a.m. doing his yoga and meditation and doing his brain tap and journaling and he has like it's like a 5-hour wind up to his day. I'm teasing, but I mean, it's when I first started working with James, I was like, what time do you start? And he's like, I don't start before 10 a.m. And I was like, what do you mean 10 a.m.? I'm like up and ready to go at like, let's go, like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And he was like, oh, I'm up. I just am not going to start working until, 10 a.m. And it's because he has such, integrity with his health. And I know that that's been put together over years. And I'm just so impressed by that. Now that's inspired us. And, we have a lot more integrity around that. And now, fortunately or unfortunately, when we travel, we have a whole bag that goes with us that has all of our devices and things that we need, which is pretty fun. But I wanted to share a quote, and then I want to get over to cortisol. I read a book, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, I don't even know when, a long, long time ago, that I think the title of the book explains what the book's about, but I couldn't tell you anything else in this book. The title of the book is The 3-Day Energy Fast, and it's by someone that I do not know, and I don't know any other work that she's done, named Pamela Sarer. I'm not sure if I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. The 3-Day Energy Fast, but there was a quote in there that stuck with me. Same corporate burnout, right? She was a journalist. She was writing for whatever she was, magazine or newspaper, and it was like high speed, always on 24/7, and she was burning out. And the quote that stuck with me was, and I've said this, I remember this quote, like it hit so home with me. It only took me, 25, 30 years to get at least wrap my head around it. She said, I had to heal myself from needing to be successful in that way. And I think it's a really profound statement. This whole idea of like this indoctrination that we have, this selling of materialism, the selling of another zero in the bank account, that our worth is decided by how much money we have and how busy we are. And we've all been there. Everybody on this call has been there. And that quote, I needed to, what was it? I wrote it down. I had to heal myself from needing to be successful in that way. Don't know what the rest of the book was about. Don't remember any of it, but that just jumped out at me. So I appreciate that. The other comment that I wanted to talk about too is, and I'll bring this back. I'll bring this back if it comes back up. But Rachel and I have this credo that we live by, which is living above the line. And what that means is, we have God, and then we have us as a couple, and then I have her, and then myself. She has me, and then herself. But the weird thing about that construct is, for me to have her first, I have to take care of myself, and I have to be my best self, to be my best self for her, and the best self for us, and the best self for our kids, and all of that. And it really keeps things in check for us, this living above the line. And that probably started being developed when we left that insanity that we left with our brick and mortar. It still took some time to put it together, but still left that insanity. I want to go back to cortisol, because you mentioned that apple-shaped body, that body fat, that visceral adipose tissue that's around our midsection. So I know we've all seen these people. I've been one of these people before, where we carry that midsection weight. I mean, skinny little legs, skinny little arms, not a lot of, puffiness necessarily around the face. But when you look, it's a very rotund, belly. And again, you mentioned, and it's true here, but I want to give us a chance to talk about it. You said a lot of that's due to cortisol. There's so much here. I know that a lot of our listeners understand what that sort of means, but can you walk us through What the heck is cortisol, and why does it cause belly fat in that midsection? What's going on?
Yeah, so a bit like carbohydrates, cortisol, I believe, cortisol is going to be the hormone we talk about most in 2026. But I want to say from the outset, it's not bad. It's like carbohydrates. They're not bad. They've just got to be timed when we want them to be the dominant working for us thing. So cortisol is released, it's part of our 24-hour body clock. So starts, up, down here goes, there's another hormone that signals that we start producing it just on dawn break in the morning, and that starts to wake us up. So cortisol plays a role in our 24-hour diurnal variation. It should peak around 10 a.m., 12 p.m. during the day, and should start tapering off later in the day. So around about 6, 7 o'clock at night, it should be nice and low. And at that point, that enables our sleep hormone melatonin to kick in. And melatonin then will peak around 1 o'clock and drop off. Now, this is obviously shift workers have different diurnal variations, etc., but just for the normal sort of, if we were living, camping, no electricity sort of stuff. So that cortisol plays a role there. It also is released when we're in I say to people, there's only 2 switches in your body. There's the on switch, the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, or the off switch, the parasympathetic, the rest and digest system. The body's always kind of in this flux, but the up state, the unconscious messages that we're sending to our body that our life is under threat or potential harm, augments all these processes in our body to enable us to run for our life or punch our way through something. Some people freeze, but generally what's happening is this flooding of hormones, and adrenaline, or you call it epinephrine, norepinephrine, we call it adrenaline, noradrenaline in Australia, and cortisol are released at that point to augment these functions so we can protect ourselves and run for our life. So it's very protective cortisol. It augments and makes us focus more. It asks and gets insulin to be more sensitized and circulate more in the bloodstream. So when the sugar's released from the liver and spleen and muscles, we can utilize it quicker so we can run if we need to run. So cortisol leads to hyper-aroused or excessive insulin. It also plays a role. It goes up to the liver and it says, hey, liver, we might be losing a limb, so can you make some more cholesterol? Because every new cell is made by a cholesterol cell ring. So high cholesterol in someone who's eating well is often due to stress. I know they're told it's familial hypercholesteremia, but that is very low. It's not genetics in most cases. It's socialized pattern that mum was a stress head, you've become a stress head, it's stress. So high cortisol may lead to high cholesterol levels. High cortisol also inflames the body. So it releases a stack of prostaglandins into interleukins that also make the body ready to repair itself should it encounter a mishap. So a lot of people feel from the head down wired, very anxious and ready to consume lots of information if they need to. Dry mouth, they can shake a little bit. They've got this insulin pumping around their body. Long-term, their cholesterol might go up. They might end up with hypertension, racy heart palpitations. But all of that, and puffiness and inflammation, sore joints, achy hips, fingers, etc., all of that long-term becomes very damaging. It's great when there is a near-death situation in front of you, or your body's fighting back a virus, or something crappy's just happened emotionally and you need that augmented response. But we're not very well rehearsed and we're not really trained from school through, and certainly not in corporate, to switch it off when we don't need it on. Because majority of the time, our life isn't under threat. And yet our body is chugging unconsciously behind the scenes like it is. Like even running late for an appointment, it's not life-threatening, but we will respond and that switch will go up and we're getting all of those hormones being produced inappropriately in a way. So cortisol, the main reason it's leading to the belly fat is combination of things. It's insulin. So I say to people, look, you might eat a healthy, almond, a high protein muffin, or even a carrot. But if you've got high circulating cortisol when you're eating that food, it will rapidly get converted to fat. We flip on lipogenesis a lot quicker than if we were eating in the relaxed state. because those hormones are circulating around. So stress plus the carbohydrate, you're going to have a double insulin spike, go straight to the tummy. That's just where it gets stored.
That's just super interesting. And um, I, I'm just going to say this. So we talked about above the line and the way Rachel and I prioritize things. Everything that you just mentioned, like running late for something, or I don't know, did I flub up on, I know I speak perfectly all the time, especially on the podcast, and never mess anything up. I'm just teasing, but replaying stuff in your head, we're like, God, I could have said this and said it better, or whatever. Um, all of that stuff, even though there might be people and things that are below the line, including our businesses, Rachel and I's businesses, it's below the line. And when we start to, and we try to keep each other in check, when we start to get stressed around below the line stuff, which is basically her, me, and the kids, that's above the line. Everything else, and God, everything else is below the line. Not that it's not important. God, I love you guys, but that's what's above the line, and that's what's below the line. And when we start to get stressed about below the line, we have to remind, I say it differently than Rachel, but I'm like, I'll try not to cuss her. I'll edit myself because I'm not in stream of consciousness, but I'll say, F that shit. Right. Like literally, I'm like, F that. It's not important. Like, that's not important. It's whatever we're doing right now. It's not important with the way we're going on this stress mode. So it's interesting because you're right. We're not fleeing from a saber-toothed tiger, but our bodies have the same chemical response, or at least we've been programmed to have the same chemical response as if my life is in danger. If I'm running 5 minutes late, I'm going to upset people. It's a very different thing. The other thing that I wanted to just kind of mention too, with what you said, when I know for me, especially when I battled weight, I've had a lot of weight issues in my life. I do have some genes that lead toward that. I didn't eat right for my body type. Thank you genetics, and thank you figuring things out like that. But I love this idea of if your cortisol is high when you're eating that carrot, your body's going to do something differently with it than if your cortisol is not high. And one of the ways that I think about that as a clinician is cortisol has a direct relationship with our insulin sensitivity. And you mentioned insulin. Insulin, of course, gets released when we have carbohydrates, right? And so it could be sugars, but it could be complex carbohydrates. It could be fibers and things like that. And different types of carbohydrates release different amounts of insulin. But when we're under stress, the body sends a signal to our cells to say, hey, don't use insulin the same way. It lowers insulin sensitivity and it increases insulin resistance. And that causes a couple of things. We see an accumulation of blood sugar. Well, the body doesn't like that. So it starts to kick out a lot more insulin, right? And insulin itself tells the body, well, if I have an excess of insulin and now I'm finally tripping those receptors and I've got all this extra blood sugar around, let's just store it as fat, right? And it primarily, like you said, will go through lipogenesis, in our liver and other processes, cellular processes, to basically what that word means is lipo, fat, genesis, create, right? Or origin. So it makes fat. And under stress, we're literally telling our bodies, make more fat, store this energy, store this, because we're clearly in a life or death situation. Use what you need right now, but then store the rest of it because you're probably going to be running from a saber-toothed tiger pretty soon and you're going to need that sugar. So store it as fat temporarily. But the problem is we live under this duress of overworked, underpaid, overtaxed, underslept, at least in America. I don't know what it's like in Australia, but I have a feeling it's pretty darn similar, for most people. But anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that, but I just think it's just super interesting to be able to differentiate between real stressors and maybe perceived stressors, and I try to draw that line. I don't know if that works for people listening, but if it helps, I hope it does. Sam, go ahead.
I think working out your workplace saber tigers, the real ones and the ones you have labeled as a saber tiger, is really important, because we go into the workplace, and I know when I sit people down, or I do Zoom sessions with them, what is triggering you at work? What do you find stressful? Oh, getting an email from my boss, running late. There's back-to-back Zoom calls and not time between a call to actually process and write down what you've got to do. So people will do back-to-back calls and it doesn't make sense. You don't have an opportunity to summarize what you've just discussed. So a lot of the workplace sabers, I think sabers are great. People understand a tiger's pretty scary, but we translate these other things in the workplace, particularly in corporate, as saber tigers, and they're not. We can reframe that and go a bit like you, like, big deal. I used to say, I had to circuit break a lot of the stuff I was doing, and I'm an emergency nurse, and I used to have to say, is anyone going to die here? Well, just back it down a bit, how am I feeling in my body? Oh my God, I'm actually really quite tense. I don't need to be like this for this environment. And big deal if they don't like you. Just take a breath and, just relax. And I started saying these little mantras in my head to pull myself up when I realized that I was in that high cortisol state. But it's not just cortisol for women, it's high testosterone. And so the polycystic ovary girl, the endometriosis girl, the high achieving HR manager or chief of people now, they're pumping a lot of testosterone out as women. These fertile girls, when they pump testosterone out, the body's once again in that state that says, my life's under threat. Guess what? The last thing it wants to do is have babies. So it switches off that whole reproductive system. Double that. It's a little bit more complicated than that, because double the testosterone with the fact that insulin and testosterone both compete in the cell to get into the actual cell. They use inositol to do that. And if you've got both of them up, insulin's secreted, testosterone's up, only one of those hormones can get into the cell. And so extra testosterone will lead to whiskers on the face, cysts, well, the insulin actually leads to the cysts on the ovaries, but belly fat, unwanted hair, acne. Young girls with acne, a lot of the time it'll be, a sugar thing with stress like cortisol. The sugar thing competes with testosterone, so they'll have higher oil production around the hair follicle. These young girls are stressed to the max, and it's like, why are you stressed? Oh, because I've got to get a really high score for uni. Like, we've created these beautiful, our babies, our little princesses are so stressed that they're getting all these symptoms that can be managed by teaching them to switch out of that stress state and bring it down and recognize what true tigers are, because most of the time they're not.
James, go ahead.
Yeah. Listening to the conversation about stress, cortisol, weight gain, being in balance, being out of balance, like, there's so many things to take home. And there's so many things for people to start really taking a break from their busyness and finding out what their trigger points are and where are they feeling inadequate. So it's almost self-discovery time. So when Jason said James travels around the world and he takes this self-care highly serious, I'm accountable for me. Like, like I was telling you, Sambo, I went and ran 2 miles today. Like, no one's going to run my miles for me unless I go do it. And I'm famous for telling people, no one's going to do your push-ups for you. Like, you have to do your own push-ups. Like, it sounds kind of silly, but you have to be accountable. And no one else is going to, like, create the life of your dreams for you. You have to do that for yourself. And the good thing is there's resources like you and Dr. Jason that can actually assist people. Now, I was talking on our last show about the application phase. Like, we could have this conversation and give people the best ideas in the world, but it takes them anywhere between 9 to 18 months to actually take a good idea and implement it. Unless one thing, their health is failing. And then they're going to go and investigate. They're going to ask, at least 1 to maybe 5 experts, what do I need to do? My health is failing. Can you come in and throw me the life preserver? I'm drowning with my own life. I don't know how to control it anymore. My job doesn't matter anymore. Only thing that matters is I need to get back online again and feel better. And can you help me? What do I have to do? But if they were to say, hey, travel around with a suitcase wherever you go, with your meditation device, with your yoga mat, with your posture rehab equipment, and don't talk to anybody that you don't want to talk to before 10 a.m., people would think you're selfish, and they would think that you're weird, and they would look at you as an outlier. Whereas for me, I'm like, I am the outlier. I am weird, and I don't want to talk to you before 10 a.m. So if we can agree to that, I'm going to be the healthiest version of myself. And you're really going to love to get to know me more because I don't drink alcohol. So I don't have to worry about being on the road with the slip ups. I'm very accountable for myself. Like, don't watch television. So there's so many things that you will eventually find over time that if you start to find out who you are, you don't get trapped in who they are.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that's living above the line for yourself.
That's
And
beautiful.
whether it's for your relationship, really, whether it's for your relationship with your loved ones, your kids, or for yourself. And like Jason said, if he doesn't take care of himself, he can't be above the line for the people that matter to him the most. So this is a big call out to everybody out there is don't wait till you need to have that like phone a friend or phone the doctor moment that says, hey, this isn't feeling good. I don't feel like life is good anymore. Start today doing the things that make you a better person so you don't get to the point of having, whether it's the familial burnout or the corporate burnout or the burnout of being the time traveler like I am. Like, you can't let yourself diminish that far down the line and until you say, hey, throw me a life preserver, I'm dying over here.
I think it's super interesting. I loved that, James. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to go into some practical things that people can do in this world because, I mean, especially in the Western world, I mean, it is corporate world, you know. And as I mentioned, you know, if you're not willing to do it in talking about human capital in a capitalistic and materialistic society, if you're not willing to do it, there's someone else that will. You know, so we create those tigers and those fears and have a chemical response to it when it's not life threatening. It just might be quality of life threatening. Very, very different things here. But before we jump into what people can do, I want to go back a little bit because it's something it's come up a few times, Sam, as I've heard you speaking. And thank you for sharing your thoughts. And you mentioned, and I'm paraphrasing, this isn't a quote. You mentioned something to the effect of so many highly achieving women that are in these corporate roles that we would call, quote, successful, whatever that means, are all of a sudden, you know, producing not only stress hormones, cortisol, but now we're seeing testosterone levels. And their ovaries, instead of producing, these words are so conventional, but feminizing hormones, you know, we're producing androgen or masculizing hormones, right? And we start to see women, you know, having more and more testosterone. I've seen that when I run hormone studies. I see that all the time with our highly achieving women, which is Rachel and I's primary, you know, client base. So we see this all the time. But you said something that's interesting. And before I get to what you said, I've also noticed in highly achieving men, they have low testosterone and they're depleted and they're exhausted. I mean, they're literally running on adrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine. I mean, they're literally running on stress chemistry. Not that the corporate women aren't. That's not what I mean. But like, it's a different animal altogether. And I know that you know what I'm talking about, right? So in my head, I've always struggled with this. Why in women do we see a rise in testosterone under this pressure cooker, but in men we see a lowering, and in fact sometimes estrogen dominance in men? But you gave me something I've never heard before on this, and I want to make sure I heard this right. You said something to the effect of and I don't know if you said this, but protecting the body from having babies, because you can't be successful and safe in the corporate world if you're going to be having babies. And I was like, oh shit, that makes sense to me. Because I mean, you know, women, there's a whole bunch of polarity things we can talk about
called epigenetics,
right? But women take on this conventional masculine role, whatever that is, of like, I'll be the man, I'll get it done.
We'll call them the boss babes.
Yeah, that's what we called them early in the show, right? Boss babes. And men become, I don't know, less. It's almost
emasculated.
I'll tell you exactly what's going on.
Yeah, what's going on?
All right. So the PCO, the young woman with high androgen, that's one of my best-selling books, which is called Beauty and the Beast Within: The Hormone Changes Making Women Wild. I'll come back to that topic because I really do want to unpack it. But just as a point of understanding for people, if they've got high cortisol and they're going through menopause, they're going to do what's called the pregnenolone still. So they're not going to produce progesterone. Majority of women I see going through menopause who are flushing, broken sleep, gaining weight, is because this pathway is overactivated. It's because they're stressed, they're burnt out. So they don't make progesterone, and that's why they're flushing and having broken sleep. It's not always estrogen. So that's what's happening in menopausal women with high cortisol. With men with high cortisol, what it does is it suppresses testosterone production. So any sort of stress that the guy's not switching off from at the end of the day will steal his testosterone in his sleep, and that's when guys make testosterone, and they will not produce testosterone. Now, if they are per chance making testosterone still in their low in zinc, it aromatizes to estrogen. So it's very common to have guys with low testosterone, high estrogen, which makes them depressed. They overthink. They send long texts. Guys shouldn't be sending long texts. You know, I as soon as I see it, I go, I think they've got a high estrogen problem here. That they get heart disease, prostate issues, a stack of things will happen because they should have high testosterone, low estrogen. Cortisol suppresses testosterone, so they'll end up with low testosterone. Now, back to the girls with high testosterone. Now, when I first wrote that book, I had what I affectionately call a hormone breakdown. And it was this one night, 8 days out from Christmas, thought I'd have a dinner party on the Gold Coast. It's very hot. It was about 50 degrees, which is like 130, I suppose, in Fahrenheit, in this gutter kitchen. And I was cooking a turkey and all this stuff. And I had what I call a hormone implosion, where I felt rage because one of my babies had done a poop. And I asked my ex-husband to change it. He said no. And I was just like, are you kidding me? And my body flooded with this rage. Now, I went looking for solutions and answers. Why was I like that? I didn't want to be like that ever again. It was such a frightening feeling because it was really dramatic. And, doctors said you're depressed. And I'm not depressed. You need this. Crystal healers gave me this. Chiropractors, everyone had their opinion, but no one really resolved it till I did a saliva test. And I found that my testosterone was through the roof. So I went, this is interesting. I wonder how many other women have this issue. And I had 5 staff members. We had naturopaths under me. We had 3 clinics and lots of patients. And I said, can we start checking? Just ask them if they felt 1, 2 things. Do they ever get angry? And can we check their hormones? What came out of it was, oh, no, I don't get angry. I just get irritated. I get a short fuse. People give me the pip. Women weren't using the word angry. We weren't allowed to. There's a lot of shame associated with it. That's changed in the last 15 years, fortunately. But when we check their hormones, 1 or 2 things are happening. In menopausal women, testosterone was very low, so they were burnt out and they had no sex drive, no competitive edge. They were just do what you want with me. Like, that's your menopausal woman with low testosterone, giving up the fight almost. And then there's this huge cohort of women who are having periods through to before they go into menopause with very high testosterone. And what I unraveled, I interviewed consulted with all these women. And what I found is there's a cohort of women, this is what I broke it down to. 4 women will end up with high testosterone in those fertile years. And it is the number 1 cause of infertility. And it is so easy to resolve. So too many carbohydrates will lead to high testosterone because of that insulin competitive pathway. So girls who are waking up having fruit salad and then they're having a coffee, then that morning tea, they're having more fruit, or sushi or pasta, high carbs will lead to often high testosterone. They're very competitive in nature. So these are your athletes, your girls who are in the corporate, the boss babes. They push testosterone up as a masculating hormone, but it also goes up when you come near us as women. You want to take my kids, you watch me raw. Testosterone's a get out of my face hormone for women. It'll also go up when women work amongst men. So frontline workers in the defence force, amongst the police force, in construction, they will often have high testosterone because I believe it's adaptive in that situation. I've put the fourth group in together, the boss babes and the competitive girls together. So when testosterone goes up for us, we're in our rawr state. We're in a very angry, unable to relax state physiologically. So it's impossible to be stressed and relaxed at the same time. It's actually impossible. They're 2 different physiological states. That was cool. Going to do that a bit more often. And so we've got to do the opposite physiological state to lower that testosterone. Now, saying to a stressed woman, and this is what I've learned over the my years, saying to someone with high testosterone, oh, you need to relax more, makes them more stressed. They go, oh, crap, how do I do that? And they get really anxious and stressed about being less stressed. So what I teach them to do is to have more fun, because you cannot be in a state of fun nor creativity with testosterone high. Now, I call these green light activities. And what happens when women do these activities is they raise oxytocin. And oxytocin will drop testosterone in milliseconds. So even coming up to someone, if they're comfortable with it, giving them a hug, saying, you know, this is a John Gray thing from Men Are From Mars. Hey, babe, you do so much for everyone else. Just come here. I just want to embrace you and thank you and love you. Testosterone will go, oxytocin will go up. The two cannot exist at the same time. You can't have high oxytocin and high testosterone. So for all the girls out there who are struggling to maybe conceive, and you know that high androgens is the issue, start having more fun. And these girls look at me and they go, what do you mean more fun? I go, you know, like, what did you used to do when you're a kid? Oh, I used to run through puddles. I used to jump on swings. I'm like, well, go and do it now. Let yourself have fun. Give yourself permission to have fun. We're so hell bent on being serious and making money. It's like, just do some stuff for shits and giggles, and your hormones will change, and you'll be able to experience joy, because you can't have that when you're stressed. So yeah.
And even when I'm like in like the zone of a woman with those attributes, we don't jive, because I'm so secure in my masculinity. My testosterone level is great. Like I get around a woman like that and it's passe to me. I'm like, oh, this one doesn't get it. She's got something going on in her hidden agenda that she's supposed to be superior. I was like, I check out, I move on, because I don't have the amount of, I guess, proving ground for myself to say I need this person in my life. I'm like, this person has a lot of work that needs to be done, and her career is more important than her life at home. And it immediately checks me out energetically away from that person to say, all right, time to go on. I'm going to go to the next thing or have the next person or whatever it might be. That the interaction will never happen for a guy like me, because that person has this vision of themselves that doesn't land. So I can imagine that other people that are that person's trying to have subordinate to them are just emasculated and tail tucked and won't ever like step up to the plate and say, you know what? I don't like the way you think about this, and I'm right for once and you're not. And I think that that's a huge conflict right there. What you're saying is that they come to this position and then they're undesirable. They're undesirable in the workplace and they're undesirable for a partner. And go have fun, ladies. Like you don't have to have the testosterone pumping through your veins the way that a man does. Just be a good woman and enjoy the role. And like you said, have fun with that position, because somebody that you could actually have a good relationship like myself that will like walk through the fire for you, you're going to turn me off like snap of a finger if you come at me like that. So I think it's also about the environment that we build ourselves into, that some people are just amazing to be around and you can like, you know, mesh with them. But when people don't have a stable estrogen level, they're not fun to be around. I don't care if it's a man or a woman in the same zone with them. You're probably gonna be like, that lady's a bitch. I'm not going to spend any time with her. And that's just the rub of what happens when people don't have balance. And when we trade out our time and our money and our careers for our health. And what happens is the relationships on the back end and the future relationships will fail. And then what happens is that person's lonely, and then they're frustrated, and then they're angry, and then they're like, how can I become more feminine again, Sambo? And you're like, well, these are the steps you need to take. Go jump in some puddles and take a swing, would you?
I like that. I really appreciate that. And I relate to it too. The other thing that I've been really like fascinated with lately is this, and James unfortunately has heard a lot of this conversation between Rachel and I, because Rachel and I are always talking about this all the time, is what does it mean to be masculine or feminine? Like, what are the roles? Like our kids get upset with us because they're like, women can be anything and men can be anything, you know, and I question, you know, like we talk about biological imperatives and we talk about genetics and we talk about these things, but it's interesting because talking about polarity, Sam, you mentioned when you're interviewing women and, you say, do you get angry? And they're like, no, I might get irritated and, like this, but there's this thing there. But here's what's really interesting. And I hope I might be opening a can of worms. And I don't mean to. James kind of opened it here a little bit. So I'll open it a little bit more. I'll crack the can a little bit more.
Bravo to me, right?
Right. So you said, do you ever get angry? I have interviewed countless women at this point, and I've asked a different question, which is, have you ever felt unsafe around a man? And 100% of every female that I've interviewed says
great
yes.
question.
Yeah.
Yes.
And when I ask the men the same question, like, have you ever felt unsafe around a woman? Most men are like, they'll laugh it off. Like, no. There's a few that are like, yeah, I really like wound up with like the psychotic person and she freaked me out. But mostly men are like, no, not at all. Right. Women, 100% of women say that. So then I start stepping back and I'm like, that's interesting, because when we start talking about masculine and feminine and divine polarity, and we can get into the metaphysics of this if we want, but when we start talking about it, there are these ideas of this traditional masculine role of being a protector and a provider and creating safety and security, right? That's men are able to do that with their physical presence, right? Because, and I'm not judging, I'm just saying men typically are bigger, stronger, faster than women. And so that's been part of our evolution, or a part of our symbiotic relationship with, between the sexes, is that, we'll do some of this stuff, you do some of this stuff, right? And I'm not trying to be offensive, by the way. I'm just saying the way things appear to be. Yeah. But when we have an environment where men don't have as much testosterone, I know that we always talk about testosterone rage, and we've talked a little bit about it here, but with men, it's actually men with the lowest quartile of testosterone with that rage and that whatever that is. And it's, I think, because men have this idea that to be a man, I have to be strong in this. And when they're low in testosterone, they're feeling that fatigue and they're running on adrenaline, stress chemistry. They compensate for this, as James would say, this like stable masculine testosterone. They compensate with anger and irritability and control and dominance. And sometimes that comes out in violent type behaviors, or at least violent type suggestions, which I think women pick up on. And they're like, I don't feel safe around that dude. And keep going, I'll wax poetic on this a little bit longer. We've also created a society where being masculine, at least in the West, is frowned upon. Having like whatever that traditional male role is, it's better to be a Mr. Mom, and it's better to like not be, I don't even know what alpha means or whatever these things mean, but like the person that's going to, and I'm going to use the word be disciplined or dominate. And I don't mean dominate others. I mean, dominate yourself so you can have integrity with your own self and your own being. But we've lowered the respect for that with men so much so that when we watch television shows, men are like the men that are portrayed are like either goofy or inept, or the women are the ones wearing the pants and making the decisions and pushing the men around, and men are kind of dumb. And then the other man that you see in a lot of shows is the quote more masculine man, but they're the dicks. They're the ones that are pushing people around. And there's no real like, this is what a man looks like. This is what it looks like to be masculine. And so then I think, okay, so women are exposed to these men that they've forgotten how to be men. And if they do remember, it's downplayed in society. They don't have as much testosterone. Worldwide testosterone is going down dramatically as we've been, putting it all into a pool and testing it. Worldwide testosterone with men is going down dramatically. So now we're compensating with stress hormones and stress chemistry and anger and violence and all that. And women are like, shit, I got to man up. I have to protect myself. These men are not here to protect me anymore. I have got to be strong. And then you take that into the corporate world and they're like, I gotta my safety in the corporate world is I have to be a man. I have to be a man, or whatever that means. I have to be masculine. I have to be testosterone driven, because there are not men around that provide safety, security, protection, and provision. I don't know. This is my observation. It's playing with polarity. Sam, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
There's just to simplify testosterone in women when it's elevated, and this was the breakthrough with my book. It is not a sex hormone in women all the time. It is a stress hormone. And when we start approaching women with high testosterone as this is what's happening, it's a stress response, not a sex hormone phenomenon, stop looking at their ovaries, then we understand why her testosterone's high. Because, yeah, she doesn't feel safe, or she's got to prove herself, and it's a man's world. All the women I speak to, and I shouldn't say all, I don't like, a lot of the women I speak to, when I say, how do you feel in the workplace, whatever, oh, well, I've got to work twice as hard. I still, in Australia, women are still only getting 82% of what a man will earn for the same job. Like, that's insane. That does not make sense. They still believe at interviews because they are of childbearing age, they get penalised. They think in menopause that they're penalised because they're not valued, because they might have foggy brain. So they're in survival mode because they've got to prove themselves all the time. So they're churning all this testosterone, and it'll go up when they're young, but as they're down and coming older, it'll drop. But back to your point more, and I guess the people who listen to this who are gay or have, you know, shades of grey with their sexuality, this isn't necessarily about them. This is about John Wayne, Betty Boo. This is about blue, pink. This is about biological anchoring, which I am found out. I'm very conservative with my blues, but I think that guys have the bits that us girls need to fall pregnant, and that keeps society going. Apparently that's old school thinking now, but men definitely have stronger strength in high testosterone. Are we doing the right thing by them in the last 10 years through Hollywood learnings, which is where majority of us culturally get our, this is the normal, and that's what, you know, why living in, you know, Hollywood with, you know, a swimming pool, that's why people have started to aspire for it, because we've been sold that that's the dream. And you're right, men are being not demasculinated, but fluffed down, and they're meant to be more sensitive. They're meant to run and cry with us and things like that. And there's space for that. But if guys become like us all the way, and, you know, as you were saying, James, if we become so masculine, who's got a need for each other? And suddenly, you know, I think, James, you were unconsciously picking girls that you know you can procreate with. I mean, so much happens at an unconscious level. And if you're sensing that that girl's a ball-breaking bitch, you know her testosterone is going to be high. It's like, well, why even start the thing? It's not even just about the social stuff. It's about unconsciously. You've probably picked out, and we know other animal species do this. They will pick, and humans do it too. They will unconsciously pick women that they know will be good breeders and won't be good breeders. And often the women with high testosterone are emanating vibes and different things that they're not. And it's not meant to push down these women who are struggling with fertility. I hope I can help them with understanding this a little bit more, because as soon as they have more fun, and so many women will tell you, oh my God, we went out and got drunk, and I stopped, you know, doing counting periods and looking at ferns and fertility cycles, all this rubbish. I went and got drunk and we fell pregnant on the couch. Or we went on a holiday, stopped worrying about falling pregnant. I fell pregnant. It's like, yeah, you were having fun. Your oxytocin was high and your testosterone dropped for enough opportunity for it all to line up. But Jason, back to your thing about men. I think you were saying you're in a group with men, discussing masculinity and what that looks like. And, you know, isn't it ironic that in 2026 we're having to circle back to what were men of the West doing? What was John Wayne doing? That, because us girls strong girls look at people like John Wayne and we go that they might be now labelled as narcissists or other things that aren't necessarily pleasant, but we have a space to look up to them with and be protected by them for, you know. It's hard to recognise that man as a woman as well. What does he look like? Is he the one that races at you with tissues, or is he the one who stands his ground and puts his arms around you and say, hey, babe, it's okay, but I've got this for you? You know, masculinity is so grey.
Can I touch on a couple things there?
Yeah.
First things is, yeah, if there's not a culture fit when it comes to a partner or even a friend, a female friend that comes into our lives, and they're trying so hard, just unknowingly chemically, they're trying so hard to be somebody that isn't biologically them. It changes the chemistry of the relationship. And back to the men that Jason was talking about and what you're discussing, it comes down to self-mastery. What are you willing to do to become a master of your biology, to where you're not running around with tissues crying with a lady? Like, What are you going to do to step into your masculinity and have self-mastery over your biology? I think that that's a real honest stance. And what are you going to do to biologically live as the feminine woman and have self-mastery over that? And we don't need to mimic other people. We just need to be our damn selves. And sometimes that's the best gift you can give anybody, is just being authentically you. And that's what happens, is these posturings and these profiles start to develop and they start to morph as people say, I have to have this identity, otherwise I won't be successful. I have to have this identity, otherwise they won't let me play in a man's world. I have to have this identity, otherwise I won't be accepted for the promotion and they'll pay me 25% less or 20% less than what they'll pay my male counterpart. So I think this corporate world burnout conversation that we opened today's show with is very, very much as, if people want to have a corporate lifestyle, they have to have self-mastery before they decide to go in and morph themselves into a personality that's not them. And they have to figure out what it is to be themselves every day and show up every day as themselves, not who the world expects them to be. And when you have that down, you'll take your hobby job to the bank and you'll turn down the brick and mortar riches for the family lifestyle. And that's another thing I did want to get back to, is guys like me and guys like Jason, we do virtual work.
You mean very handsome people, as I think they're very handsome, character attractive people, right? I mean, just talking
the attractive character. Here we go. We've taken ourselves out of these structures, Sambo, and we put ourselves into these virtual worlds. I know that a lot of the world was heaved out of the corporate world, and now they're doing the reverse commute. They're going back into the corporate world, and they're going back into on demand from the business structure to come back into the workforce and to show up to work at 8 a.m. on Monday mornings. What is that doing to the workplace? And what did you find that was happening in the work environment with this reverse commute from sending everybody home to have home jobs to now bringing everybody back in online to say, you're going to show up 5 days a week from 8 in the morning to 5 p.m. What have you seen as a disruption in the, I guess, the balance of work environment with the quality of life that people are getting now?
Yes, this is a big topic in Australia. So just to, and I hope I hope we're not offending anyone with these chats. I can be very candid, and it's not meant to offend anyone. It's excuse me. We're talking about hormones, and we're talking hopefully safely about exploring these as well. But we did, as women, enter a man's world. And in the 70s and the 80s, it was majority of men who were working and we were staying at home. So when you go back, excuse me, and look at the social shift, what was happening was we were coming out of being purely homemakers into the workforce. So we did have to adapt, and it was stressful because it wasn't the parameters that we were used to, and it certainly wasn't our biological bent. And I used to say, if I was Prime Minister for a day, we have a Prime Minister here, not President. If I was Prime Minister for a day, I'd change the work hours. I'd have it so women didn't have to start till 10 o'clock and they would finish at 4. Because like you, James, they need a certain amount of time in the morning to just get things ready and organised and placate and do all this self-care. And that's just the way we're wired. It doesn't mean we're weak. It just is the way we thrive biologically when we've attended to some exercise, some eating well, some meditation, maybe having a coffee or a tea and sitting out the back with our feet on the earth. That brings out the best in women, not stressing, going to the gym at 5 a.m. and getting to work at 7:30, looking like she's the most attentive and working through lunch breaks. That does not make women thrive, and it never has, and I don't think it ever will. So, sorry, you were asking about, I just got sidetracked.
The reverse commute.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sending people back into the workplace.
COVID and all that sort of stuff. So, so the big issue at the moment is getting people back to work, and I can see both sides. I was actually going to run a study on it hormonally, because a lot of people will tell you, and do we need, like, we've set up structures where we all have to, be in a physical location. Why? Why is that? Well, okay, maybe we can share photocopying expenses. Maybe there is some sound reason for doing that. We can crossbreed, cross-propagate ideas over our tables. Everyone's there. We can get things potentially facilitated quicker. But I think we've got around that through the laptop working from home. And there's a lot of resistance for people to go back into work because they realise that they were spending 2 hours a day travelling to work, that they were having to put makeup on, that they were having to iron clothes, that they were having to put on this armoury to just be in the location so they could potentially perform, which performance was no different to work or in that venue. But then I know there are other people who are vehemently opposed to what I'm saying, and they're saying that people need to be here. One angle is for young people having mentors around them and removing the loneliness of working on your own. So there's two sides to it. I think, the three of us have found freedom in how we operate, and that's, we're not in our 20s. I think in your 20s, you're a little bit subservient to the industry that you're entering into and the rules that have been established there. But as village elders and people who've been around and the conversations we're having, we might have more influence to say to that industry, hey, you know what, maybe you're going to get better productivity and performance through wellbeing by changing this environmental factor. And so the onus does fall on us a little bit to protect the generations coming through and sculpt corporate. But, corporate is all about performance and profit. So we need to frame it up in a way that is actually, you know what, you're going to get better performance out of this person if they do start at 10 o'clock. Oh, no, everyone has to start at 8:30. That sends a bad message through the company. Does it? Or is it that progressive? That. I think that's where the conversations are going to be in 2026 with corporate. What brings the best well-being out in your staff? What brings the best culture out so everyone feels like they're being listened to, heard, acknowledged and catered to in a way that's transparent but also individualised so the culture can, or the company can succeed. That's what it's about. Not everyone's the same.
I think that's well said. Go ahead, Jason.
I think that's well said. That's what I was going to say too. No, ditto. I totally agree with that. I think it's interesting too. I mean, like reframing the corporate, I was going to say reframing the corporate framework, but reframing that corporate structure. Again, it's about productivity. I mean, early bird gets the worm, work harder. I know we say work smarter, not harder, but I mean, I think in the corporate world, it's like work smart and hard. Our older daughter was talking to her male friend. They're officially not boyfriend girlfriend because they haven't declared that yet. But
come on.
I know, and they're exclusively dating, and I'm like, what's the difference? I mean, like I don't really fully understand the terminology, but anyway, I'm also not in my 20s. There's a whole dating lexicon I don't know about. But he was, he's over in I think San Francisco. And he was burning a little bit of the midnight oil because he had some projects to get done and this and that. And everybody had left the workplace. And she was chatting. He was taking a break and called her. And I thought that was cute. But I'm like, why do we push that? It's interesting in the corporate world. And I was thinking that, if we could help the powers that be, the people that run those corporations, understand they'll actually get more productivity from their workers, from their employees, if we allowed them to have a leisurely morning or a self-help morning. And if people actually took the time to do that self-care in the morning, not just like, well, I slept in and I'm still rushing to work and I'm still whatever because I stayed up late. I mean, there's got to be a structure to it. But I mean, I do think that if we could get, individuals to buy into, hey, if I took a few hours in the morning to, get morning sunlight first thing, go on a walk, do my yoga, do my meditation, do some journaling, get my head straight around life before I check my phone, check my email, jump into work and, all these things. And then, had a, finish your projects, but let's all roll out of here at 4. I like that idea, 10 to 4, 6-hour workday. I love that. 30 hours a week. I love that, we talk about, 40-hour work weeks in the West. I mean, and it seems like if you're employed by any type of company, you're putting in 50, 60 hours. I mean, you just are, even though it might be a 40-hour work week, But I mean, to get your promotion, to get the raise, to get the to climb that corporate ladder, I mean, you're putting in 10, 20 hours that you're not really hired to put in. And I truly believe what you said, Sam, that if we could get everyone to buy into take care of yourself first thing in the morning, live above the line, as I keep talking about, pour into yourself and what matters. Journal about your purpose, find a connection with the work that you're doing and your purpose in life. I mean, whatever that is. Our purpose is not to make more money for some, corporate owner. I mean, I hope not, I think our purpose in life is probably bigger than that. And if we can connect with that first thing in the morning, I say connect with a higher power, all of those things, connect with myself, my partner, taking care of myself, pulling the James Chester, suitcase out that has all the cool gadgets that I want. Every time he shows me a new gadget, I'm like, I want that new gadget. But doing that self-care first thing, I think we'll see more productivity. I truly believe that. I don't know that it's been studied, but in my heart, it seems right. Am I hearing what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? Am I hearing it right?
Yes, and I think men probably have a greater capacity to work longer hours. I think, biologically, they would have left the cave and gone, come back on sundown. Women, though, we haven't necessarily left the pod or our location of safety or nurturing to go and hunt and gather and then come home. Like, it's biologically, things have changed a lot. And I think, like for a girl who's having periods, we know there are times that she's going to be more creative and energized, and there's going to be times in a normal cycle, not in a dysfunctional cycle, but even in a normal cycle where her performance and productivity isn't going to be as high. So if we can help people with this hormone literacy to take, give them the empowerment to say, actually, look, we really want you to focus on your wellness this year, because we know that when you're thriving, that this whole company is going to thrive, and our performance and our KPIs are going to be through the roof, because we actually know at the moment, the way it's going, everyone's only about 70%. Even getting a 5% increase in people's performance because their well-being's been attended to makes a massive difference to the bottom line. So the conversation, sure, that with people, and people often change culture. I'm hoping that I can get in and make really big headroads with C-suites, leaderships and corporate to say, as leaders, we need to be role modeling what we're expecting and driving the culture in corporate, because I think in corporate it might be the other way around than community. So my whole focus this year is on, the C-suites, the CFOs, the CEOs, the COOs, and just saying, how can you look after yourselves better? And when that's happening, you're going to unconsciously role model and say to other people, hey, are you enjoying work at the moment? You look a bit disengaged. Yeah, well, I'm really tired and I haven't had time to do this and this. Hey, just what I want you to do for the next week is not come in till 10 o'clock. I want you to start waking up. I want you to start doing all the things you were just saying, not just rolling over and sleeping, but actively bringing your body back into a place of rejuvenated energy. And that can be done, rather than, that's what I'd like to see happen.
There's more to life than work.
There is.
That's what I think. I think what the show kind of boils down to is there's more to life than work. And I really think that if people find a way to enjoy themselves, the work is more fun. And like the old saying, if you do what you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. And if you get somebody and you capture them and you slave drive them into a position of submission, they're not going to last long anyways. So be careful about the productivity that you expect out of somebody if you want longevity out of them. And if they're not getting their happy quotient and their lifestyle quotient, they're gone. So all of the time and effort that you spent into hiring this person and to bringing them into becoming that team member, they're going to be clawing the wall 24 hours a day to figure out how to escape the hell that you just signed them on to. So be careful the trappings that people offer and the time that you trade out your health for that financial stability and driving the nice car and having the roof and the ride, I call it. People spend most of their money on the roof and ride. So if you can be humble about your roof and ride and keep a low overhead, you don't have to play that game. And that's been, my claim to fame for a long time is you don't have to play the game. Not my monkey, not my circus. And I think that that's the way people have to think about life long term is what type of game do you want to play? And are you the monkey? Are you in the circus? If not, you can walk away. And I think that that's the thing is if you get yourself a bad position, eventually you're going to walk away. If there's too much pressure and you're not feeling right, you're going to walk away. And I think that that's the cornerstone of today's conversation, full circle, full circle, full circle. If it's not right, we'll all walk away. And whether it's with more money or with more health. And I think that that's the big clarity moment for all of us when we get to the point of this topic is what do you want? Are you going to be self-mastery or are you going to be subordinate? Are you going to be in your masculine or are you going to be in your feminine? Well, that's for you to decide. And that's how you show up every day, whether it's at 10 o'clock or 7:30 in the morning. And whether you cut off at 4 p.m. or if you cut off at 8 p.m., what's your gain and how long will that last? Because they say it, season, reason, or lifetime. And you have to decide how hard can you go for that reason? How hard can you go for that season? Or will you go hard all the time for the rest of your life? Whether you've been at it for 10 years or 2 years, what is it for you? And is it worth the trade-off? And I think that that's really what we come to at the edge of today's conversation about corporate burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just, we went a little over today. So Sam, thank you so much for your time today. I greatly appreciate it. I love, honestly, like I'm looking at my show notes, my notes, and James has the same notes as well. And I think we have 20 more questions that we could ask. It just get like I feel like we're just like unlayering here a little bit, So we'll have you on again for part 3. We'll just keep the discussion going and keep it live. Thank you for your time. Also, links to Sam's books, including this latest book, Corporate Burnout, can be found in our show notes on show notes at getbetterfasterpodcast.com. We'll have links to connect with Sam, connect with her books and all of that as well. So I just want to put that out there. Go to the website, getbetterfasterpodcast.com. Check it out and check out our books. They're fantastically written. So thank you so much, Sam, for your time today.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure as always. And it's just so provocative to think about where we are now and how we've come here and how do we enhance it for ourselves and everyone.
Absolutely.
And I just love your voice, so I could talk to you for another hour and a half. So I always love having a good accent on the show because I got the good plain Jane Midwestern monotone. But Sam, it's been exactly the reason we wanted to have you back, just because I know the conversation's so invigorating and the information you change is absolutely game changing. For our listeners, if you're in the corporate world, running a business, or pushing yourself at high performance levels, you need Sam's new book, Corporate Burnout, the one we've been talking about the entire show. This isn't some fluffy self-help book to tell you to meditate more like me. But this is a hormonal blueprint for surviving and thriving in high stress environments without destroying your body in the process. That's a big takeaway, right? Like, don't destroy yourself in the process of climbing the corporate ladder. And here's what makes Sam different from every other wellness expert out there. She's been there 25 years in the corporate leadership. She knows the pitfalls, the traps. She's lost count of how many high-performing professionals she's helped pull from the edge of complete hormonal collapse. Like Dr. Jason said, her programs, you can get them at getbetterfasterpodcast.com, aren't just protocols. They're rescue missions for people that the medical system has completely failed. Whether you're dealing with adrenal fatigue, testosterone crash, premenopause, in the C-suite, or just trying to have energy past 2 p.m., as we talked about, 4 p.m., without reaching for your 4th cup of coffee, Sam has the answers. Grab Corporate Burnout on Amazon. The book could literally save your career, your relationships, as we were talking about, and your health. And remember, nobody is coming to save you, but experts like Sam showing you the real root causes of real solutions can absolutely save yourself. Sam, thank you for coming back and having the courage to write a book that calls out the corporate health crisis nobody else wants to admit exists. And to you all, our Get Better Faster Nation, if this episode resonates with you, as I suspect it would for most of you, Share it with your colleagues, your boss, and your team. I know it might be a little bit of twingy if you share it with your boss, but do it anyways. The corporate world needs this wake-up call. Don't forget to subscribe, grab Sam's book, and keep the questions coming, because we're just getting started exposing the lies that are keeping people sick. We are so thankful that you'll come back for episode 3 with us. Until next time, keep questioning everything and keep getting better faster. GBF Nation, thank you. Sambo Patrick, thank you. Jason Bradley, you're an amazing co-host. And Dr. Rachel Bradley, thank you so much for the executive producing today. And everybody out there, we'll be back for part 3. And this isn't bye forever, it's just bye for now.
Bye for now. Love you guys. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, James. Thank you, GBF Nation. Thank you, Rachel. I love you.
See you guys in the next episode.
See you guys.
Bye.